Warm welcome.
Thank you, Bob. All right, we're not going to mess with it. Hi, everybody. My name's Deshu. I'm an alcoholic. I am grateful to be here and grateful to be sober today. And I want to first thank Victor and the committee for asking me to speak. I remember when he asked me, it was a couple years ago, and I was floored when he asked me to do this. And because I'm someone, so I don't know that there's honors in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? But I do believe that when you get asked to share your story, it sort of is the greatest honor in AA, because that's what we have is our stories, right? And Bill Wilson talks about it when he's in The Family Afterwards, where he says, cling to the thought that in God's hands, our dark past is the greatest possession we have. With it, you can avert death and misery for them, right? That's a powerful thing. Our stories, that if we can carry a message of depth and weight, can hopefully, someone can identify in, and they can realize that they don't ever have to feel the way they did the day before they came into Alcoholics Anonymous ever again. And so whenever I'm asked to share my story, I am honored to do it. And so I also want to, I got to put this on tape too. I want to thank my wife. So there's a reason, I'm not just doing that. There's 1 week between the end of school in Montgomery County and my kids' camp. And 2 years ago, they asked me to do this, and I knew they were going to do it again. Victor called me and told me, and I didn't put it in the calendar. And so we planned our family vacation in that 1 week, and it happened to be last Saturday to this Saturday. And when I looked at the calendar, I was like, honey? And she's like, what is it? And I said, well, you know that Maryland State Conference or Convention? And she's like, yeah. I said, well, it's the last weekend of our vacation. And after her initial shock and anger, we came up with a plan, and she said, you need to go, and that's also happened. And I want to say this, she understands the importance of Alcoholics Anonymous. She's in AA too, and we have an AA home, and on Mother's Day weekend, I was asked to be a substitute at another retreat, and I asked her, and I was like, honey? And she, I started to say what was going on. I was like, it's the second oldest retreat in the country, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, what is it? I said, it's Mother's Day weekend. She says, you need to go, and so she knows the importance of us participating in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And because my life depends on this. Without question, my life depends on what I do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope I never think at any point in my sobriety that I've got this, and I don't need to do the things that I needed to do when I first got here, right? I watch people come in and out, and they're like, what do I do? What do I do? And it's like the same thing we told you in the beginning. You know what I mean? The same thing. Call your sponsor, go to meetings, pray, do the steps, be of service, right? And so, like I said, I'm really grateful to be here. So my sobriety date is October 17th of 2002. I have a sponsor and I have a home group. And those will be the three most important things you hear come out of my mouth today. Those are the foundations on which my recovery is built. I do not believe that I would be here without those three things. I have a sponsor who guides me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and gives me an objective view of my life. I'm emotionally invested in the decisions that I make, and I think they're all really good ideas. And you're going to hear over here in the next 50 minutes or so that I don't really have very many good ideas. And he's just been down the path farther. And I say this to the guys when I start sponsoring. He doesn't make me do anything. He can't make me do anything, right? He's just that one clear voice. And non-alcoholic people seek counsel when they make decisions. We didn't, invent this kind of thing, right? They talk to their parents, they talk to their wives, their sisters, their brothers, they talk to people when they make decisions in their lives. And so I have my home group. It's the meeting where I've been accountable to since I got sober, and I'm there just about every Sunday night. I was there every Sunday night until me and my wife, we had kids. Then we had a custody battle over the meeting, and we had to split it. And so, but I kind of won because I got 3 weeks and she only got 1. So I like that. But it's the meeting where I go, and it's my home base in AA, and people know me, right? I walk in that meeting, and they ask me how I'm doing, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. And they look at me, and they go, really, what's up, right? Because they know me, right? And I don't know if there's anybody else in here, but I say this all the time. I'd rather look good at 19 and a half years sober. I'd still rather look good than let you know that I'm dying in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean? I will help people, but like asking people for help is still, it's still like painful to me. And so, I'm grateful for those relationships that I have there, and people can call me out on that. And And I have my sobriety date. And I say this also when I get a chance to speak, it's the date that my life changed. I do not believe that we are special as alcoholics. We're all God's kids, alcoholic or not. But as alcoholics, we are blessed. Alcoholics in recovery, we are blessed that we get to live two different lives in the same lifetime. We get the one before Alcoholics Anonymous, which is pain, chaos, suffering, and misery for us and the people that love us. And then the one after, if you do what's outlined in the program of action in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you get a life that's promised happy, joyous, and free. And that's for us and the people that love us, right? I say my mom and my sister became two of the nicest people in the entire world after I got sober. And it has nothing to do with them. And so, I hope that I can convey to you guys today that I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's the greatest thing on the planet. It has absolutely transformed my life. It has transformed the lives of the people that I care about most in the world today, And, I hear people, when they're up at the podium, they say they got their life back. They got their life back. And I was like, really? Like, I didn't want what I had before I got here, That wasn't a life. It was like an existence. And it was a very bad one at that, And so I got a life after I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's an abundant life. I was talking to my sponsor the other day, and he was telling me how you have such an abundant life, it's busting at the seams. And I don't see that, I'm still negative in the way I think a lot. And when I'm talking about abundance, I'm not talking in the material sense. You know what I mean? I'm talking about my inner life, and I'm talking about the relationships that I have in Alcoholics Anonymous and the people that I care about, right? The things that I couldn't maintain before I got here. Those personal relationships with people and caring about other people, and right? Because in the way I lived and the way I thought was like, if you got something good, right, then you got a piece of the pie. And if you got a piece of the pie, then there wasn't enough pie for me. And then when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I learned that God's pie is infinite. You know what I mean? So alcoholism affected my life from a very young age. My dad was an alcoholic. We were living in Minnesota at the time, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard my mom crying, and I asked her what was wrong. I came out of my bedroom, and I came to the kitchen, and there was 2 police officers with her, and she's crying hysterically, and I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Daddy's dead." And my dad was an alcoholic, and he committed suicide, And he tried. I know he's alcoholic because he tried. I have a 30-day chip, 60-day chip, 90-day chip of his. I have a medallion from a rehab. I have his 12 and 12, and I have a 24-hour-a-day book that actually has phone numbers in it. And he just didn't get it. He just didn't get it, And so shortly thereafter, we moved not far from here, about 20 minutes south in Rockville, Maryland, in a suburb of D.C. And my mom provided everything that we needed, But it was an upper middle class white community, and I was a short, fat Indian kid, and it just didn't work, right? Everywhere I looked, everything was different, right? They had 2 parents, I had one. Their parents would drive. This is the '80s, so their parents were driving Mercedes and Toyotas, which were really big deals back then. And my mom's driving a copper Pontiac station wagon. The kids around me are wearing polos and Izods, and I'm wearing Garanimals. You know what I mean? And I am wildly uncomfortable, right? And people say a lot. Well, I actually have two proofs now, 2 reasons. One is I tell people that you feel different than your fellows, right? I am the speaker without the proof that I am different than my fellows. But when I was younger, it's like, I have my 4th grade picture, right? And there's everybody and me, right? And it's not hard to tell who the different guy is. And so look, my dad being alcoholic doesn't make me alcoholic. And me being wildly uncomfortable doesn't make me alcoholic. What makes me alcoholic is what happens when I drink beverage alcohol, right? I have a different reaction than 90% of the population. It changes my perception of the world, right? And my first drink wasn't a big deal, I didn't think. We were 15 years old, we were walking home from school, we were cutting through the woods and through the path, and then we came upon some beers that, it was like a 6-pack of beer just laying like along the path, and I don't know, some kids got scared away, they left it, whatever. But the guys I was with just took them, popped them open, and started drinking them like they knew what they were doing, right? And then they said, "Here, have some." And I never thought about drinking, cared about drinking, wasn't on my radar. I was a nerdy Indian kid. Didn't matter to me. But at that moment, my head said, if you don't do this, they'll never ask you to do anything ever again. And so I drank, you know what I mean? And look, it was warm beer. We found it in a park. I spit it out the first sip. But we finished that off, and I didn't get drunk that day. I didn't. But now what I believe is I set off that allergic reaction that it talks about in our big book. And the first part of that was the obsession of the mind, right? For the first 2 weeks, or for the next 2 weeks, all I did was think about alcohol. I wanted to know what it tasted like, what it smelled like, what it did to you, what it felt like, what the big deal was, why everybody talked about it. And then I remember going to my first keg party. I remember having the red cup. I remember having the first drink. And I remember waking up the next day. And to me, that is the phenomenon of craving, right? You hear about it all the time. You drink until you run out, pass out, or black out. And that's how I drank, for the next 17 years. And alcohol, took me places I never thought I'd go, to do things I never thought I'd do, with people I never wasn't raised to do them with. And but I love the effect produced by alcohol, right? I told you, it changes my perception of the world. But what it does for me, right, it changes my perception of you, the way I look at you. But more importantly, for a guy like me, it changes the way that I think that you think about me, right? It washes away all the insecurity, all the inadequacy, all the inferiority that I ever have, right? Because I can tell you, I every time I go as far back as I can remember, I would look back and look in the mirror, and I hated what I saw, right? Because I didn't see what I saw when I looked at you. Right? I wanted to be taller, I wanted to be skinnier, I wanted to be whiter, I wanted to be more athletic, I wanted to be sexier, right? I wanted to be anything but what I saw. I joke about it, but I became the Hindu Brad Pitt when I drank, right? And I was like, hey, and but that's what it does, right? And that's how it changes my perception. It's a disease, there's this disease of perception that I have, and it doesn't do that for the average normal drinker, right? The average normal drinker considers alcohol a beverage. Think about that. Really. They consider alcohol is in the same level. It's a beverage. Iced tea, water, soda, coffee, milk. It's all in the same category for the non-alcoholic, right? And to me, it's the elixir to life. It is the only thing that makes me feel comfortable in the world, right? It does something for me. It did something for me long before it did anything to me. And, I used to listen to Clancy, speaker tapes of Clancy I, and when I first got sober, and he described it, when he drank, it made him feel like other men looked, right? And I understood that feeling. I understood it deep down, right? Because, when we moved to Rockville, to be closer to family, none of my I had no male role models. My grandfather, my uncles, nobody, they weren't around, right? I had nothing. I'm going to date myself. The only male role models I had were Fonzie and the Marlboro Man, And so when Clancy said that, I totally understood what he meant when it said he made him feel like other men looked, right? And so like I said, I love the produced by alcohol. I love the effect. And so I went, in high school, I didn't have a lot of consequences. I drank on the weekends. It wasn't a big deal. I had a lot of fun. And I worked, so like I said, I was a nerdy Indian kid, and it was the 80s, and I tried to, want to be cool. And I failed miserably. I dressed like a cross between Don Johnson and Billy Idol, okay? I had a rat tail, I had bangs, I had earrings, I had a thin black leather tie, and I talk about it, I said, it's like, the movie 16 Candles, there's a character named Ducky, the Hindu Ducky. It was awful. It was horrendous. And so I got picked on a lot, right? So I didn't have a whole lot of friends. So I hung out with my mom's friends' kids, a bunch of Indian kids, and we would have house parties and stuff. And we just, we would drink. And so I used to work at a place that developed film. It was called Moto Photo, and I had access to the machines, and so I made fake IDs. And I hung out with the one other Indian kid that did drugs, and we were the bad boys. And we would have these parties, and I would bring the alcohol, and he'd bring drugs and stuff, and the people would want to be around us, and it was awesome. They were talking about us, and it was great. And so, like I said, not very many consequences, and I did okay in school. But then my senior year came, and my mom wanted to give me a present, and she paid for this senior trip, and it was a trip to Rio de Janeiro, and I was excited, so stoked. Beaches of Ipanema, right? And then I look at the list of all the people that are going. And it's a bunch of these football players and jocks that had been picking on me for the last 3.5 years. And I'm terrified. I'm so terrified I tried to get my money back, right? Couldn't do it. So now I have to go on this trip. So I am terrified that, I'm going to be in a foreign country with little to no adult supervision, getting my butt kicked up and down the beaches of Ipanema. And so we get on the plane, and I can tell you, I don't know if it was the 80s, if it was international waters, whatever. The flight attendant comes by and asks us if we want anything to drink. And we started ordering liquor, airplane bottle after airplane bottle after airplane bottle. And it was like the last 3.5 years never happened. And the next 10 days, and for the next 10 days, we were just best friends, right? Just best friends. And then we get back on Monday, and I'm going to my side of the parking lot, where the losers hang out. And I pull in, and these guys go like this. And they waved me over. And you hear in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous all the time that feeling you'd arrived, right? And that was it. Alcohol provided me the opportunity to be with the people I thought I wanted to be with, doing the things I thought that I wanted to do that I didn't have the power to do on my own, right? I talk with the guys I sponsor and other people about those pinnacle moments in your drinking, right? Those moments where you don't overshoot the mark. You absolutely have the perfect mix, right? The sky parts, the angels sing, like this is the feeling. This is the feeling that I know that I want, and this is the one now that I believe is the feeling the book talks about that I chase into the gates of insanity or death, right? Because I think that I can recreate that feeling over and over and over again, right? And the problem is, it happens, but it happens far and few between. But it happens just enough for a guy like me to think that I can do it again and again and again. And I keep trying, right? And in the midst of that, I don't realize that I'm actually dying. And so I got out of there, and I went to the University of Maryland, and I commuted from my first year, and I hung out with those Indian kids. So I didn't have a whole bunch of friends. Obviously, I wasn't making friends. I didn't live in the dorms or anything. So those Indian kids we were hanging out in the student union, and my drinking really took off to another level, and I started to be a person that I wasn't raised to be, right? I started to drink more, I started to cheat in school, I started to not go to class, started to cheat on girlfriends, and these guys that I was hanging out with were breaking into cars and stealing radios and radar detectors, and they asked me to come with them, and look, I had never stolen a thing that I remember before that in my life, and I said yes. Right? Again, because I thought if I didn't say yes, that they wouldn't ask me ever to do anything ever again. And shortly thereafter, I got my first arrest for breaking into cars. And so the next year, I moved off campus, and those Indian kids, because I was fighting with people a lot and getting into trouble, and they just really didn't have anything to do with me. So that other Indian kid that was doing drugs, I met up with him and I talked to him. He joined a fraternity, and so I was like, light bulb. You join a fraternity, you pay them, you can drink as much as you want, and they have to be your friends. Brilliant. I found out, so they don't have to be your friends. Just letting you know that. If you're a jerk, they treat you like a jerk, and so you don't make friends with everybody. But you can drink as much as you want as long as you pay them. So I started pledging that fraternity, and I'm pledging that fraternity, and I'm living off campus, and I'm driving home drunk a lot, and I don't say that with any pride or anything. I'm just grateful that nothing ever happened. It's one of the most selfish things that I can say that I did was driving drunk. And so I get to my apartment one night after a party, a fraternity party, and I'm in my bed, and my mom calls me, and she wants me to come home. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. She said she's not feeling well, and I said I can't drive, I can't come home. And then she calls me back again, says she's throwing up, she needs me to come, and I said I can't. She calls me one more time, a couple of hours later, it's probably about 5 in the morning, and I mumbled something into the phone, and I don't go. The next call I got was 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was my uncle, and my mom had had a heart attack. And so I'm 30 minutes from the hospital, 30 minutes, and I don't get to the hospital until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I don't look good, and I don't smell good, and I don't feel good, you know what I mean? And my extended family's there, my uncles, my grandfather, my aunts, my cousins. And they looked at me with the look. And if you're alcoholic of my type, you are intimate with that look. You know what I'm talking about. It's that look of how could you, or why did you, or you did it again, but you promised. And the feeling that you have in return is that feeling of incomprehensible demoralization, like it talks about in the book, right? And I know that feeling. Again, I'm intimate with that. And And the answer isn't screw you, I want to drink, right? That's not the conscious answer that's not my conscious thought when I'm doing what I'm drinking. It's not the conscious answer what I have when I see that or when I feel that. But what happens is when I'm in the midst of my alcoholism and I'm trying to get what I need to be okay in the world, the people that I love the most become collateral damage, right? They get hurt. And the thing is, though, is that I think that I can say I'm sorry, and they'll forgive me, and everything will be okay, right? Because it's happened before. I've done something, and they've said I'm sorry, and they love me, and they want to forgive me, and they do. My sponsor talks a lot. The alcoholic, somebody tells you get one more chance. An alcoholic thinks you get 3 more chances, right? And that's how I was. That's how I was. And so my mom was in the hospital, for a while, and I only went to see her a couple times. I was convinced when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous for all those years that the reason I didn't go see my mom was because I was terrified that she was going to die. And it was going to be me and my sister, and I didn't know how I was going to live and what was going to happen, But I came here, and the fog lifted, and I got down to the causes and conditions of my drinking, and really what was going on was I was still pledging that fraternity. And I thought that if I didn't show up for those events, that they wouldn't have me. And that's the guilt and shame that I bring into Alcoholics Anonymous. I talk with the guys I sponsor about, this analogy. If you take a line and if you take a pencil and you draw a line on a piece of paper, and you take an eraser to that line, you'll always know that line was there, right? It never completely goes away. There's a faint resemblance of it on that page. And for me, that's that line between right and wrong, right? I'm a believer, and I may be wrong, but I'm a believer that, nobody's born innately evil. Things happen and people become bad, and so we all know the difference between right and wrong. And when my alcoholism, I know what's right, and when my alcoholism takes hold, I start to do bad things, and then that line between right and wrong starts to fade, and it fades a little bit more, and I'm hanging out with people that are doing the same things that I do, right? So how can wrong be wrong? Wrong has to be right if they're doing it too. And then, what happens is that line just kind of goes away. And then, like the book talks about, the alcoholic life is the only one I know. And I've completely, I'm in the midst of my alcoholism, and wrong now has become right. And, my life in college was, again, you hear about chameleons in AA. I was a chameleon. I had long hair. And so I would wear my baseball hat backwards, my fraternity letters, and my duck boots, and go to my fraternity parties. I would wear my hair down, my tie-dyes, and my Birkenstocks, and I would go follow the Grateful Dead. I would slick my hair back, put it in a ponytail, wear a silk shirt and a blazer, and go down to the clubs, like Fabio down in D.C., the clubs. And what happened when I had all these different groups, right? And I would drink, and I would drink, and I would drink, and when everybody started to question me, or I started to do something, or I pissed somebody off in one way or another, I would just go to the next group and just keep moving around. And they would forget about me until I came back around, And I just had fun, and then nobody saw how bad I was actually getting. I got kicked out of school because I didn't go to class, and I ended up working my way back in, and it took me 6 years to graduate the University of Maryland. And after I graduated, while I was there, I was a drug dealer. I always try to find a good way to explain that, right? Import-exporter, facilitator. I was a drug dealer. I became a drug dealer, and so I took that out after I graduated with me, and I moved down to downtown D.C., right? And it was like another feeling that I had arrived, right? I was down in a place called Adams Morgan, and there's these 2 streets come to a T, and I had a 3rd floor of a row house, and I had a view of the Washington Monument out my back window, and it was like, yes, right? Now, I graduated college, and I'm, supposed to start the next chapter of my life, and I'm supposed to have goals, right? And aspirations. My greatest goal when I got down to DC was I wanted to be able to go to a bar, order the usual, and have the bartender know exactly what I meant. That was it. I wanted to be like Norm from Cheers. I just wanted the guy to know what I meant. How cool is that, right? But that was it. That's how high I was shooting, right? It wasn't about career, family, anything. And I ended up getting that in a couple bars, and my drinking again took off to another level. My first job downtown, I was sort of a copy boy, and I would go into work, and I would I would drink all night and party, and I would go into work, and I would do what I had to do, and it got so bad that I would literally go into the bathroom stall, pretend I was going to the bathroom, and fall asleep. And then, that I somehow, I took some classes, and then my friend of mine was working for this big international organization. It was right when the internet and coding, HTML coding started to take off, and they needed someone, so he recommended me, and I somehow got this job, and it was at this huge international organization, right? My mom is immigrated here, and I'm first generation, and me getting a job at this place was a big deal. I don't think my mom had ever been prouder of me in her entire life. And so I would work, and it was the same thing. I would party all night, and I would go to sleep for a couple hours, and I would do other things, and then I would get up and I would go to work. And at this point, I had my own office, so I had these certain duties, things that I had to update in the morning, and I did them for a couple hours, and then I would take a nap under my desk. I would close the door and take a nap under my desk, and it was international organization. They served beer and wine at the cafeteria, so I would go down there and have a couple to take the edge off. And then I would go to I'll get to just enough to get to happy hour, right? And it would just be this cycle, and I thought my life was destined to suck, and I would just learn how to manage the suck, And my relationship with God at this point was, you can make my life suck. You can knock me down. I'm going to pick myself up, dust myself off, and flip you off, and then I'm going to but you're not going to make me quit like you made my dad quit. And it got to the point where I knew it was so bad that I put Post-it notes all around my apartment that said no more. The front of the door, the back of the door, the TV, the phone, the refrigerator, my bed, my computer. And I would do this, I did this a bunch of times, but I would make it like 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30. And I'd start peeling down the Post-it notes, and I would call the Chinese restaurant that delivered beer and cigarettes, and no food, just beer and cigarettes I would get from them, and then I would call the drug dealer that had the stuff I didn't have, and then I thought I was just changing my mind. I thought I was just changing my mind until I read in the book where it talks about there's a point in our drinking where we were drinking because we had to, not because we wanted to. I had lost the power of choice long before I thought I did. I was drinking because I had to. There was no changing of my mind. My alcoholism had a hold of me, And so I'm working at this international organization. I wake up one morning. It's March 28th of 2001, and I wake up with those four guys sitting at the side of the bed. Terrible bewilderment, frustration, despair, right? Like they always were. And it was just another day that we're gonna suck, And I go into work, and I'm working, and I get a call from security, and security wants me to pick up a FedEx package. Now, I intuitively knew something was wrong because security doesn't deliver FedEx, A, and B, they wanted me to come down to the main building to come get this package that I had no idea what it was because I didn't expect anything. So I walked down to the main building of this 8-building campus for this organization, and I get to the front door, and the DEA is there, and they were waiting for me, and they arrested me right there, right in front of my coworkers, and they charged me with conspiracy to distribute MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy, as it says right across the front of my indictment, and I went from being whatever I thought I was, club kid, drug dealer, VIP, this DC nightlife guy, whatever, to being the worst turd in the toilet bowl, I had to go home and tell my mom her son was a drug dealer. Again, that feeling of incomprehensible demoralization. She didn't raise me to do those things. So for the next 18 months, I fought that case. And I fought that case, and I fought that case. My sister postponed her wedding 3 times. Without telling her fiance why, because it was too embarrassing. She ended up calling, because she had to postpone it because my court date kept getting moved, and we weren't going to be able to explain why the eldest male in the family wasn't going to be at her wedding, right? And she, at one point, yelled at me for a little while and called me the most selfish person she's ever met in her entire life. And I hit her back with a profanity-laced tirade that ended with, "You don't know what my life's like." That's the selfishness and self-centeredness that I bring into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I fought that case. So I did Christmas of that year, so December of 2021, it's Christmas time, and I got a DUI. So I could have gone to jail while waiting to go to prison, and I did not think alcohol was a problem. I just thought it was a bunch of bad luck, right? And so I thought I would pray. I told you this God I didn't believe in. And the reason I didn't believe in this God is because I watched my mom pray every day of her life. And my mom's parents both died when she was young, when she was in India. Both her sisters died when she was young in India. She came here with her brother-in-law, and he died. Her husband committed suicide, and her mother-in-law died of lung cancer, never drank or smoked a day in her life. And my mom had a list of health conditions that included congestive heart failure, rheumatoid arthritis, kidney failure, glaucoma, edema, and you get the point. There's more, but you get what I'm saying. And in my mind, if that's what you get in return for prayer, thanks, but no thanks. What's the point? If that's what you get in return for asking God for help or praying to this God, why would I need that? And so I decided to pray to that God I didn't believe in. The book talks of, our literature talks about, a kid makes a list for Santa Claus. I didn't want to go to prison. So I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. Every morning I knelt down in front of these things, the statue that I had my mom had given me in my apartment, and I prayed, and then I had to plead guilty. And I was right. God didn't work. I knew it, So I ended up having to turn myself into the federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. And that's my what happened. And what happened for me was, I was in this boot camp program. It was military style. They shaved my head, combat boots, Army greens, and it sucked. It sucked. It started off with 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. It was physical training, hard labor, chow, class, physical training, hard labor, chow, class. You get, rinse and repeat until from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. I mean, it was so bad. We were up in the Poconos. It snowed. We cleaned up. We shoveled the parking lots. They had nothing for us to do the next day, so they made us move the snow from one side of the parking lot to the other. It just sucked, right? And so every night after chow, we had to march for a couple hours, right? An hour and a half, couple hours. And so we're marching these first couple weeks, and we're marching every day. And these couple Friday nights, I see these guys sitting in a circle in the building. They weren't outside marching with us. So I got up the courage to ask one of the inmates what they were doing, and they said, they're in the AA meeting. You should volunteer. You don't have to march. I went right to the drug counselor the next day. I said, can I be part of AA? She said, oh, you were going to AA. I guess my drug intake form or whatever, I passed with flying colors. But I actually volunteered for Al-Anon on Thursday nights, too. Because I didn't have to march. I'm alcoholic. I'm not stupid, right? And I joke about it. I've been sitting down ever since, right? Actually, seriously, I've been sitting down ever since. And what happened for me was an elderly woman and an elderly man with an oxygen tank came in there without fear for their safety to this federal penitentiary and brought the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to us. Now, I'll tell you, I had the privilege of being our intergroup chair here in D.C., and I've been, watching the H&I committee and all that stuff, and I've watched, 6'2", 25-year-old men say they didn't want to go into a facility with juveniles because they were afraid for their safety. And that's fine. It's totally fine. It's their right. What I'm saying is, though, if it wasn't for this elderly woman, this elderly man that thought they were doing what God wanted them to do, I wouldn't be here today. And then, I have a debt to pay to those two. And what happened was none of us cared, right? It was during the first Middle East war. If you guys remember the sniper shoot, obviously the sniper stuff was going on here. It was that time, and we were cut off from the rest of the world. One 15-minute phone call, no radio, no television, nothing. So we would ask this lady a bunch of questions for 15 minutes, and none of these guys cared. They were all trying to get over like I was. And then she made us have an AA meeting, right? She made us read, she made us talk about, she made us share. And so after the few weeks, I finally asked her, well, what makes you an alcoholic? Now, I described to you the phenomenon of craving, the obsession of the mind, the allergic reaction that, in the doctor's opinion, that is 100%, I believe, the definition of alcoholism, 100%. But she said it this way to me. She said, what do you do when you get angry? What do you do when you get jealous? What do you do when you get envious? And she said, you slowly commit suicide while the other person isn't even thinking about you. I said, man, I've been drinking at people my entire life. My mom, my dad, my sister, my girlfriend, your girlfriend, my cat, The guy behind the counter at the 7-Eleven, the guy who cut me off on 270, the guy with 18 items in the 15. Screw you, watch this. I'm at the liquor store, I'm at the bar, and I'm drinking at them, and they're going about their life, not thinking about me. So I went back to my bunk that night, and I took the Serenity Prayer, and again, I prayed to that God I didn't believe in because I didn't know what else to do. And I took the Serenity Prayer, and I made it mine. And I said, God, grant me the courage to change my life, the strength to do it, and the wisdom to know it's the right thing to do. And I prayed that prayer, and I prayed that prayer, and I prayed that prayer. And I'll tell you, it didn't dawn on me until I was telling this story 6.5 years sober that my prayer had been answered. Because I'm standing before you today sober, And now I'm a firm believer that in the power of prayer, I believe we're all here because somebody prayed. Mother, brother, father, sister, uncle, boyfriend, girlfriend, somebody prayed and we're here. And we've got the grace to get sober. And so I got out of that place, and they sent me to, they told me I had to go to a halfway house, and then I went to the halfway house, and they said that you have to go to 3 meetings a week. I said, no, I'm going to go to 1. I'm alcoholic. I get it. I admit it. And they said, no, you're going to go to 3. You're going to go back to prison. Okay, I'll go to 3. Again, alcoholic, not stupid. So I started to go to meetings, and I'll tell you, I wasn't like, woo, you guys are my people, right? No. I would listen to you guys share about stuff that you shouldn't talk about outside your house. I listen to people talk about going to jail sober, going to, sleeping in their cars sober, and I'm like, I am not like you people, not like you. Now, mind you, I am still property of the federal government. My inmate number specifies me as such. And I'm going into a halfway house when they tell me when I can eat, when I can sleep, when I can, come and go, and I have to piss in a cup just to stay. And I'm judging the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what I bring to you, right? And so what happened was I started to go to these meetings, and there was a guy who I used to drink with who found out about my situation, and he got in touch with me, and so I asked him to temporarily sponsor me, not because I wanted a sponsor, but because I wanted a home pass, and I needed a temporary sponsor. And he's like, screw this temporary stuff. And I was like, dude, why are you yelling at me? And what happened was, what I didn't tell you before is after I got arrested, I started a business with a friend of mine because I didn't think I'd ever work again, right? I never get a job, so we started a business. So when I got out, I went back to that business, and we were working out of my friend's apartment, and he would come to the apartment, and he would bring me lunch, and he would read the big book with me. Now, that's cool. But the kicker on that is that this guy was drinking at the time. He knew enough about Alcoholics Anonymous and helping another alcoholic that he reached out to me and tried to help me. And he got sober again for a little while, but then he died from this. He died from our malady. And I'll tell you, like that, the elderly woman and the elderly man with the oxygen tank and my friend Big Jeff, if it wasn't for people like that, I wouldn't be here today. I am indebted to the people that came before me. And so I ended up going home, and I got an ankle bracelet, and I got to be in my own house, and I was supposed to be excited, right? Greatest day, I'm home again, and I realized it was one of the longest days of my entire life. I didn't have any friends, right? You know who your friends are in prison, and I didn't have very many. I had clients. And the friends that I had, the only people that I had phone numbers for that I could talk to were the people that I had met in the AA meetings. So I started to call them, and I started to go to AA meetings. And, I got my ankle bracelet off, and when I got my ankle bracelet off, I was determined that I was, once I was done with this, that I was going to go back to the club. It was going to be Cristal and the VIP section and then the party, right? And the day I got my ankle bracelet off, I ended up going to the movies with like 40 alcoholics. And then I had to drive some new kid home that lived 20 minutes the opposite direction of my house. But I got home and I didn't drink that night, Shortly thereafter, I was praying on my knees, and I was praying, and I was started to cry, and I finally went to my sponsor. I'm like, man, I'm done. This doesn't work. You know what I mean? And see, what was going on was, like, after I got when I had that ankle bracelet on, I had 15 minutes to go to, 15 minutes before the meeting, and I had the time for the meeting, and then 15 minutes after, and I had to be home, where there's a siren going off, police are coming to get me, and I'm going back to prison. So I was coming to the meeting, drinking your coffee, eating your cookies, taking your message, and I was leaving. Now there's this, meeting makers make it to a lot of meetings, and don't get me wrong, meetings are vitally important to my recovery. Please don't mistake what I'm saying. But if that's all you're doing, you're not doing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean? And that's what was happening to me. I wasn't doing it. And my sponsor said, "You have no faith." I was like, "What do you mean? I found God in prison." And he said, "You don't have the faith in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous." And because I wasn't doing it, And what happened was I got 3 service positions in 10 days, And then I started picking up my sponsors' friends, and I had to go, I would drive 30 minutes into Virginia. I would drive 30 minutes back to Maryland to pick somebody up, 20 minutes the other direction, 20 minutes the other direction, then drive to D.C. And I had these guys in the car, and then I would drive them all home. And by the time I got home, I was too tired to even think about drinking, right? And they were like, and anytime I started to complain about something, they wouldn't let me, right? It was like, no. They told me to shut up, basically. And they talked about Alcoholics Anonymous rather than listening to me complain. And I'll tell you, I got busy in AA, and, my own group, people in my home group were calling me the happy Hindu. You know what I mean? It was like it completely all changed. So I'm cruising along in AA, and I have this business, and then like 3.5 years sober, everything falls apart, right? I think so. My life falls apart. I had that business that I had started goes away. I have no money. The AA girlfriend that I thought I was going to marry left, and my mom was sick, and my car was dead. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. And a friend of mine who owns a gas station offers me a job. Now, my worst fear when I went to prison was I wasn't going to be able to get a job again. I was like, what I was doing before, and I was going to be the Indian guy behind the counter at the gas station. And so here I am, the Indian guy behind the counter at the gas station, and I'm in more emotional pain than I've ever been in, than I remember, right, drunk or sober. And he's telling me that I have to clean. He said, first day, he's like, you have to clean the bathroom. He's showing me how to clean the mop and this. And I was like, wait a second, what are you talking about? He's like, you want me to clean the public restroom? He's like, yeah, it's your job. And I was like, what? And so what happened was I had forgotten that I was cleaning. 3.5 years before that, I was in prison cleaning bathrooms for free. My ego had gotten so big that I had forgotten that. Again, right? My late grandsponsor used to talk about ego deflation, right? This is the ego. That's the deflation. Did you see it? And so and look, I also want to say that also taught me another lesson. God doesn't care what we do. God doesn't care what we do. I thought I was too good to be the Indian guy behind the counter of the gas. I'm not too good to be anything. God does not care what we do. He cares who we are. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, And so 6 months later, I get a new job. I got a new car. That girlfriend came back. My mom had gotten better, and I'm getting paid again. And so I was really confused because I called my sponsor and I was like, hey, I don't know where I'm putting my reliance. Everything was, going bad and I felt bad, and everything's going good and I feel good, right? And he said, well, what were you doing when everything was going bad? I said, I was going to the meeting, I was talking, sponsoring guys, I was talking to you, I was doing service, doing steps. He goes, what are you doing now? The same thing? And he said, there you have it. And I said, what? I was confused. But it was because my alliance was in Alcoholics Anonymous and what I was doing here, right? And what happened was, in that time period, when I got that job at the gas station, when all that stuff was going bad, 3 men asked me to sponsor them in a week. And I was like, God, I don't want men to sponsor. I want my girlfriend, I want my money, and I want my job, right? And at that time, I was chairing the Maryland. I think it was we were trying to bring Ikipa to Montgomery, to Maryland, and I had to go down to Sessions by the Sea. It's a 3,000-person AA conference. Right? We were putting on a dance there and a meeting and all this stuff, and I was like, I do not want to go, right? But I have to take this kid who called me while I was in the bathroom of the gas station crying on my knees. I was really glad I cleaned the bathroom, but he called me and asked me to sponsor him, and I didn't want to, right? But I've also come to understand that God doesn't care how I feel. He cares what I do. Now, don't misconstrue that either. I know he wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. I believe that. But he's not taking my temperature every minute. You know what I mean? He's not. And if I don't feel good, I don't feel good. And so I took this kid down there, and he caught fire in AA for a little bit, and I sponsored those other men, and actually none of them are sober today, but I am. And sometimes that's what happens. You know what I mean? And, and so I'm going along in AA, and life is good, and we put on Miggy Pa here in Montgomery County, or up in Montgomery County, and it's 2007, and we're putting on this conference, and I'm like excited, and the Saturday morning of the conference, my sister's now living in California, and my mom had gone to visit her, and I got a call, and it was right when the first meeting was going to start. It was about 9 a.m. It was my sister in California, so it was like 6 a.m. there, and I was like, what's going on? This is weird. So I answered the phone, and my mom had gone into her kidneys had failed, and she had gone into a semi-coma, and my sister was crying, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to get on a plane or leave or anything like that, and so the meeting started, and one of the past delegates here, Nancy Kay, was their speaker, and she came up to me afterwards, and I told her what was going on, and she's like, "What do you need me to do?" And the rest of the committee and the people that I was talking to, they were like, "We've got you, whatever you need to do." And the loving arms of AA, held me that day. And my mom ended up, I didn't go out, and I was talking to my sister, and my mom woke up from that coma, and she, I got on the phone with her, and she asked me how I was doing, and then she asked me how my sponsor was doing, and how my pigeons were doing, and how my grand sponsor was doing. And you see, what had happened was in that time, my house became, I was living with my mom because at first I had no place to go because I got out of prison, but after that I started to pay the mortgage and help her and take care of her. And my house became an AA house. They would come over, we would have sponsorship meetings, we'd have barbecues and all this stuff, and they all knew Mama Galati, you know what I mean? And she knew them. And it was amazing. And people would come and sit with my mom that never met her before from Alcoholics Anonymous. One guy had actually he had been convicted of attempted murder, and he came and sat with my mom, and he was sober, and he was a different person, and I wasn't worried about her safety. And that's what's happened for me in Alcoholics Anonymous. So now I'm cruising along again in AA, and that gotten laid off and everything like that, and then now that scenario of me getting laid off, my mom being sick, losing the relationship, not having any money, it happened 3 more times in sobriety. It happened like every 3.5 years, and every single time in that period when it's like a 10-day, 2-week period, right? Everything seems to fall apart. 3 men asked me to sponsor them. It's gotten so bad that anytime a couple guys ask me to sponsor them, I tell my sponsor, it's like, it's coming. And so, like this, when they happen, I'm like, I don't get it, right? I'm like, I understood from the first time, God, I got the lesson. I understand. Trust you, do the work, right? Blah, blah, blah. And the third time it happened, I was getting ready to get married. It was 2012, and, or 2011, sorry. And my mom, I was sitting in the ICU with my mom. She was in the ICU. She was really sick. And at this time, I had gone to work for an international law firm, right? Now, I got this job. I'm not a lawyer. I got this job at a law firm because I answered yes to the question, right? Have you ever been convicted? I didn't want to. My sponsor told me I had to. And I go through this interview process, and I get this job, and it was cool, right? it was a great job. But 6 months after I get this job, we move into the building that I worked in, where across the street from the building that I worked in when I got arrested. Directly across, like I was in my new manager's office looking into my old manager's window, right? And I realized that, I was I was almost in the exact same place, doing almost the exact same work, making almost the exact same money, being a completely different person. And I don't know how I get there without AA and God, So I'm working for this organization. It's 19 offices, right? They got 19 offices. They're a huge multi-million-dollar law firm. And I'm sitting in the ICU, and I get a message that they're gonna shut down. Bring your stuff in the next day. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? And so I'm getting laid off again. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? So it's the beginning of May, right? It's the end of May. I'm getting married at the end of April, right? And we're selling the house that we've lived in for 32 years. We were supposed to move in the middle of, and we're getting married, and we're supposed to move in the middle of May. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know, I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I'm like, God, why? Why me? Why now? Why again? And my mom got out of the hospital and needed 24-hour care. Guess who didn't have a job? Could take care of my mom. Then somebody else from AA who never met my mom a day in her life came and sat with her while I interviewed for a job in Richmond, Virginia. It was going to be headquartered in D.C., but and I did that job, and I got that job, and then they told me that I could start after we moved. They gave me a month, and I've come to understand that why is now a management question, right? I'm trying to manage my life. And the answer to the question why is maybe just why not? It's just your turn, you know? But all those times when I was drinking, I thought that God was picking on me, right? I thought that was just, now I don't. Now I just know it's just life. And the last time it happened, I was gonna have my firstborn child. And I'm like, really, God, I gotta pay for a kid, you know? I don't understand. And I got laid off. And I got a 2-month severance. And I was able to spend the first 2 months of my firstborn child's life with her every single day. And then I used to drive an hour and a half each way to DC in my commute. And I ended up getting a job that's 20 minutes from my house. That's cool. But what's even cooler is my daughter has special needs. And we wanted her to, we put her in preschool, and then we wanted her in her special needs preschool, and we wanted her to have acclimation into, with normally developed children. So we put her in that. And the thing was, I only worked 20 minutes from home and from the school. I could go pick up my daughter, I could have lunch with her outside on the picnic bench, and then drop her off at the other preschool and get back to work on time. And I wonder why God is doing things to me. Why are you doing this to me, right? He's clearing the way for me, you know? He's not doing things to me. And, so my daughter has special needs, and the day we found out, we went to Hopkins, Kennedy Krieger, and they said that there's a delay, and we don't know, she might be on the autism spectrum and stuff. And me and my wife left that day, and there was dead silence in the car. And I had the worst thought that I probably have ever had in AA. And it was this. It was, I've got this wonderful life, this abundant life now in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? But I did all of these things before I got here. And God's not letting me get away with it. And my daughter with special needs is my punishment. My father-in-law, who I thought didn't like me very much, told my wife, month later, isn't it amazing that God and Sasha picked you two? Because you have the resources and the strength and the willingness to give her everything she needs to be successful in this world. And then at that moment, I realized, God wasn't picking on me. He was trusting me. He was trusting me with one of his kids. And, and she's, I used to put a hashtag on my Facebook posts with all my pictures of her that said, hashtag Sasha doesn't care, right? And it's also another hashtag that said, my life doesn't suck. And it wasn't to brag. It was to remind me that my life doesn't suck and that my daughter just wants her dad. She doesn't care about all the other stuff that's going on in my head, When I got arrested, right before I got arrested, I put down a down payment on a house with my mom because she wanted to live in a brand new house that nobody had ever lived in and pick the colors and pick everything, right? And then I got arrested and we had to withdraw that. I had to basically yank her dream from her, right? We had to withdraw the deposit and she couldn't move. And so, when me and my wife were getting married, we decided we were going to move into a brand new house. And we were going to take my mom with us, and we were going to let her pick the colors and do everything she wanted. And she got to move into that brand new house, and I got to make that amends and give her her dream back, And, when my mom was sick for the last time, and so I had this stretch of that year where my mom, I had gotten married, right? I got married. 3 months later, I actually asked my wife to leave. We moved into that house. I reconciled that marriage. There was a house fire in that house. My mom had gotten sick. Then my mom passed away. And then my sister had a miscarriage the day after the funeral. Then I went back to work 2 weeks later, and I got rear-ended on 270, got a concussion. And it was just like, what's next? What's next, And so, I don't tell you that to make you feel sorry for me or anything. It's just like, I tell you that because what happened was I leaned into AA. While all this stuff is happening, nobody told me to go make yourself feel better. Go shopping. Go do something, right? They said to me, trust the process. Go help someone. Pray. And that's what I did. For whatever reason, I've had the willingness in my time here at Alcoholics Anonymous to lean in. It hasn't been an option for me to just turn my back and walk away. Now, have I stopped praying to God sometimes? Yeah. But I've always come back. When my mom was sick for the last time, I was at the hospital. She was in the ICU, and I went, and it was her birthday, and I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, Mom, I love you. Happy birthday. And I kissed, and she said, I love you too. Thanks for being here. And then I left, and her heart stopped 20 minutes later. Now, my mom's birthday is on February 12th, right? On February 12th of 2011, she died. On February 13th, she died. On February 11th, 2013, my daughter was born. And they were in my same hospital, right? So literally at one moment on the 12th, I was feeding my daughter the same, like one floor below where my mom had passed away a year later. And, and I don't know what, my daughter has a heart-shaped birthmark right here. You know what I mean? And I don't, so I left it was like 1 year, right? I left my mom at the hospital 1 year later. I'm taking my baby daughter home. I don't know, like I say this all the time. I don't know if that has anything to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. I do know that for me, it has everything to do with God, And I took my mom, and, in that year, I took my mom's ashes to India. And I can assure you that if I wasn't sober and I wasn't with people like you in rooms like this, that I would have tried to convince my sister that we could have just gone to the Potomac River and dumped my mom there. But I was able to do the rites of the Indian sun and take her to the Ganges and take her home. And so what I like to say is thank you. Thank you for my life. If it wasn't for people like you in rooms like this, I would have missed it all. I would have missed all of it, And so if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, please stay. If you've been in and out, please stay. If you've been here and you're not happy, joyous, and free, find someone that is. Do what they do. You know what I mean? That's it. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. That's the closest thing you're going to get to a guarantee in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Do what we do, you'll get what we get. And the last thing I'll say is my sponsor, Joe S., and a man named Larry O'Connor altered the trajectory of my life. Larry was raised up in AA by a man named Brother Alexis. And Brother Alexis taught Larry about love and service and gratitude, and Larry passed that on to us. And Larry taught us that, what Brother Alexis said, which unspoken love and unspoken gratitude aren't worth a damn if you don't speak it. So speak it while people's ears can hear it and their hearts can feel it. So I am grateful. I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my higher power. I'm grateful for everything in my life. And if nobody's told you today, I love you, I love you, I love you. Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.